When you go to a buffet, you expect that there will always be enough of each kind of food on the menu so that your favorite dish will be there when you go through the line. But what if the chef only spends $100 instead of $200 to make sure that there is enough extra food on hand just in case? Well, in a way, that's similar to the problem we will be covering today on the county seat. Hi, I'm Chad Booth. And hello again. In our scenario, the buffet is your protection as a citizen, and the entrees are the available law enforcement officers to serve and protect the community. It seems that we have not spent enough time and money in the kitchen to make sure there's an adequate force on the serving line. As a result, law enforcement agencies have resorted to stealing from each other's plate to get the officers they need. That is the topic of our discussion today. We start today at the supply line, as there's only one place in Utah to get certified law enforcement officers. That's the Academy. Here's Rhea with the basics.
So you want to wear a sheriff's hat and join the world of law enforcement. That's a noble ambition. In fact, my nephew followed that path back in central Illinois. It was hard work and required more from him than his college education had. You see, most people think that to be a deputy, all you need to know is how to shoot a gun, drive a car fast, tackle the bad guy, and read them their Miranda rights. Something that you might learn in 1 quarter at a technical college or by watching 5 seasons of Hawaii Five-0. But in reality, law enforcement officers have to wear several hats. In any given hour of duty, they might have to wear the hat of a psychologist, a negotiator, a technical writer, a race car driver, an expert marksman, a paralegal, a professional bodyguard, and a member of a crack military patrol squad. In fact, the skills required of a law enforcement officer are so specialized in Utah, they are not offered in any college or university curriculum, but rather through one academy, the Police Standards Training Academy. To get in the main campus of this specialized school, you actually have to have already been hired by a law enforcement agency. And while offering the course to non-hired students, the 7 satellite academies located at traditional education institutions are still governed by the academy. The course is divided into 3 certifications: Special Function Officer, SFO, Basic Corrections Officer, BCO, and Law Enforcement Officer, or LEO. All applicants have to take and pass the SFO course to continue. If your goal is to be a bailiff, reserve officer, or a constable, this is all the training you need. From there, jail officers complete the BCO and law enforcement officers the LEO. To pass the LEO course, you have to be physically present for at least 588 hours of in-class or hands-on instruction. There are topics you might expect, like emergency vehicle operations, pedestrian stop and approach, traffic accident investigation, and report writing. And topics you might not even think of, like crimes against government, court demeanor and testifying, natural weapons defense, or law enforcement encounters with citizen dogs. In addition to all this training, you have to be versed on the entire Utah Criminal Code, Homeland Security laws, and Utah and U.S. Constitution. You see, it's hard to enforce a law if you don't know what it is. To top all this off, you have to be proficient in first aid and CPR. Each student has to sit for and pass a final exam and meet additional requirements to earn the right to wear his or her badge, like meet a list of physical condition requirements. A candidate will have no criminal record, a valid driver's license, and be a U.S. citizen. And most important, possess a desire to serve and a passion for justice. It's not work that will ever make you money rich, but if you are the right personality, it can be oh so ever rewarding. Best of all, there are no shortages of jobs for good officers anywhere you go in the state. In fact, your interest in becoming an officer will help deal with a major problem our sheriff's departments are having statewide, as we will discuss when we come back to the county seat. I'm Rhea Rossi Booth.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah. Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Antelope Island State Park. Think of it as a treasure island because of the unique activities and treasured experiences you'll enjoy there. The 25th annual Antelope by Moonlight Bike Ride is coming to Antelope Island State Park Friday, July 27th at White Rock Bay. Tailgate party begins at 7:30 p.m. Bike ride begins at 10 p.m. under a full moon. Register now by going to antelopebymoonlight.com. Discover nature, buffalo, historic Gar Ranch, and more at Antelope Island State Park. Visit plaindavis.com/antelope today.
Well, welcome back to the county seat. We are talking today in our discussion part about sheriffs, as Rhea alluded to in her story on Post. There is a shortage. This is not a slight shortage, it's a severe shortage of eligible deputies coming out of Post, and there's not a single county across the state that isn't looking for extra help in the Sheriff's Department for deputies. Joining us for discussion about the problems and possibly the solutions from Sevier County, representing the rural counties, Nathan Curtis, the Sheriff of Sevier County, and we have Rosie Rivera, the new Sheriff of Salt Lake County, who didn't have to drive as far but has a very busy schedule. So we'll get right to our conversation and get you guys into your day. Thank you for joining us. So I want to start the conversation by just asking where the shortages come from. Why did we get in this spot? What happened?
Do you want to go first, or you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think a lot of it has to do with there's a culture change where people don't want to be police officers anymore. Also, the retirement system changed. So there's not a real incentive when you have to work 25 years and you get less than the person you're working side by side with that was in the retirement, what is it?
The state retirement
Tier
program.
1. So the Tier 1, it's 20 years. And you get 50%, it builds up, but you're working right next to somebody else that has to work 25 years.
So I guess that's the question. That was a recent change the legislature went through. That
4 years ago, I believe.
About 4 years ago. Did we make any headway? I know it was a big topic in the legislature to try and get that corrected.
We didn't get anywhere with that. A big part of it, again, is the public opinion of it. When I was hired on over 20 years ago, that was part of the enticement to come into law enforcement is, hey, in 20 years you can retire in place. That's why we're going to pay you only $10 an hour. We're going to pay you less now because you can do that later on. That option was taken away, and so a lot of our officers, you're seeing them not stick around, so we're losing a lot on the upper end. The bottom end is hard to get new people just because of that very reason. The retirement, the pay, the legislature changing different things on us.
So are you actually losing officers that have already gone through Post and been in the field and the retirement changed and they go, oh, forget this?
They can't see themselves working 25 years, you know, for a young person, 25 years is a long time.
Yeah, especially when you hit that 20, particularly in this kind of line of work. I mean, you know, you got to be able to run a mile and a half, and you got to be able to, you know, scale walls and pull yourself over. It's not easy work.
Absolutely, and it's just the day-to-day, and that's why it was set originally at the 20 years. The things you see, the things you deal with every day tends to burn out a lot of people. And so if they get beyond that 20 years, the 25 to the 30 years, you look at a lot of those men and women, some of them are really jaded about how things are done, and they get very burned out, and we don't become as effective when we're that way.
So how do we solve the problem? I mean, we can't just go on stealing from each other to I noticed that you guys were kind of like, how many deputies do you have? I'm not going to tell you when we walked in here today. I mean, what do you...
Well, there's some things that we can do. We can try and retain the employees that we have, which is still really tough because the job market is, you know, right now anybody can go out and get a job and make the same as a deputy makes right away. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we will have to start raising our pay more and more, and that's what we've been doing in this crisis. Is we're all competing and raising our pay to catch up with the next agency. I am going to be taking to the sheriffs a suggestion of maybe hiring officers at a younger age, 18, 19, or 21, but only for jails. Mm-hmm. Not for the law enforcement side, but just to come into the jail. There's some jobs that they could possibly do, but that's a huge change to what we've been doing.
So I guess that begs a question. Why not just wait till they're 21?
Well, if you wait till they're 21, there's this gap of when they get out of high school. They have 3 years, but in those 3 years, they either get married, have children, find jobs, or some of them even find themselves in trouble, and then they can't pass a background. So if we can get them right out of high school, military does it all the time, and we train them well, we should be able to have them work in a jail. Law enforcement side is always going to take from the jails. We train our people very, very well, and they like that. They like experienced officers to go to the road. So if we can even have them for that 3-year period, that's still going to help us out.
So I guess the background check is kind of a stunner to me. Is that has significantly changed? Are other states lowering their standards?
I don't know what other states are doing. I haven't looked into them. I know other states aren't quite as intense as the state of Utah is in what we will accept for an officers, but I know even in the years that I've been in as sheriff, it has changed the requirements on drug use, things like that. Those things have been, the strings have been loosened a little bit so that we can still allow for that.
So you're saying some of the deputies you hired today couldn't have hired when you got hired?
Most of the ones I've been lucky enough to hire, I've had a couple I've had to turn down that were considered, that years ago we wouldn't have even accepted their application at all.
Do you think part of this is a problem that the perception of law enforcement officers, people still think that it's like a technical school, and training is that it's, you know, like a 6 month of training, and they don't realize that you've got to understand the entire criminal code, you've got to understand Homeland Security, you've got all these different areas of law. I mean, between that and the psychology and the hostage negotiation, I mean, it's tougher being a law enforcement officer now than it's ever been. Do you think that there's a perception that people don't understand the skill set that's required versus what they think the job is?
I think people understand what is required, but I think the attitude towards it, all across the board, everything from our county commissioners, our state legislators, the general median public, have a perception that we're not as important or that it's not as good of a career. So they're not willing to put the money there or the attitude towards it that this is a good career, this is an honorable profession, and we want to have the best people we can.
So at some point that though it's going to implode though, isn't it? Because at some point, if you're losing people to, say, you know, oil field security officers because they can make 60 grand a year and there's no way that a deputy's ever going to make that, and all of a sudden your shortage will continue to grow until you are not down 8 but you're down 25, then people start getting hurt because there's not enough law enforcement. Is that what we're going to have to go to till it changes?
Well, you know, I think that law enforcement will always step up and make sure those communities are safe, but I think the real issue is going to be in the jails. If you can't staff a jail, law enforcement side can't be booking people in. Then what do you do? And, you know, we have a situation right now with Salt Lake County Jail. We're down about 88 right now, deputies trying to hire. And, you know, all the other agencies around us are taking our people, but they don't realize when you do that, it affects you as well, because if we can't have you book people in, then what happens?
I know you're too gracious to say this, but I can say it. So Salt Lake City comes in and they hire away your jail staff. They put them out on the beat. They arrest somebody and they send them to the jail they stole the deputy from, and you've got no way to book them. You're having more problems staffing than you are with the total number of beds available? Is that a problem?
We're having more problems right now with staffing, but we are at full capacity. We have been for several years.
So what's your situation like in Richfield?
So I've replaced a fifth of my office in the last 4 months. We did a hiring back last October. We had 4 applicants. 4 applicants. And only one of them would pass the background in the interview process. Then when we told him how much his paycheck was going to be, he says, that's okay. I'm going to the prison for $3 an hour more.
So you ended up trying to...
I wasn't able to hire anybody because of where we were pay-wise. The other thing to consider, especially when it comes to the jails, when you're that short-staffed, now you're going to be paying overtime to cover that. And when you start paying overtime, that affects her budget, my budget, all of our budgets, and then those guys get burned out as well. Then when you really need them for other things, they're not willing to come in.
So they're basically shot at 15 years instead of 20 or 25. So how do you fix the problem? I mean, that's a serious, and if you have I hate to use magic wand because everybody makes fun of me because I say it too much, but if you could write a prescription, there we go, that's a new one. If you could write a prescription to solve the problem, hand it to the governor and the legislature and your county commissioners, what would the prescription be?
I would first start with that retirement system. We have to change something because you can't have people working in the same department side by side with 2 different benefits. We lose people that way. We lose our tier 2. Also, I do believe that if we take a look at changing the age for the jails, for corrections, that could help. Their pay is always an issue. We're always competing with pay. And, you know, until we figure it out, that's what we're going to have to do, is keep paying and paying more and more money.
Do we have to just find more pay?
Pay is a portion of it. When it becomes to a point where the pay isn't the worry, then it's the work environment. So it's a combination of all of the above, exactly what we've been talking about. It's your work environment, it's your pay, it's when you have people working on a task force or whatever, side by side doing the same job, getting completely different pay. Those things affect it. But also, we need to, and I think Sheriff Rivera is exactly right, we start in the high schools a little bit and we do a law enforcement class. And then all of a sudden they learn that I have to wait 3 years, I have to go do something else in the meantime, and those things happen. So we need to continue that progression all the way from high school, find a way to keep them involved in what they're doing and excited about it, and continue that process. So pay is a big part, retirement is a part, but I think work environment is a big deal, and we need to continue that process.
So there you go. The prescription's been written. All you legislators, you need to pick it up, study it, look at it. Thank you so much for your input today. We are actually going to come back to the county seat in just a minute. We're going to go on the ground in one county to find out how a deputy shortage actually affects their day-to-day operation. Stay with us. We'll be back on the county seat.
All local products have a story of magical places, real people, and delicious recipes spanning generations. So go ahead and discover flavors you've never tasted and friends you never knew you had. Utah's own Discover Local Food.
Years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
Look south to adventure. Look south to beauty. Look south to San Juan County. Out here, the road goes on forever, and what you'll find will change how you see the world. Climb on your OHV and discover forgotten landscapes and vistas that challenge the imagination. From Blanding and Monticello to the cliff faces of Monument Valley, we're open and ready for you to explore. San Juan County, Utah's Canyon Country.
Welcome back to the county seat. So far today, we've looked at how we get a pool of qualified candidates through the Post Academy, which is required whether you're hired or elected as a sheriff. It is important to note that while most post certifications are paid for by the hiring agency, people can get the certification on their own. We have also examined the causes of the shortages and explored some of the possible solutions. But to consider the impact of what a shortage does to an agency and the community, we need to go on the ground.
Hello, I'm Sheriff Mark Gower with the Iron County Sheriff's Office in southern Utah, and my job is to patrol the unincorporated areas of Iron County as well as operate the county correctional facility.
So one of the main issues that we have within the state of Utah is that statewide the officers are down 600 throughout the state. Agencies have that open and void area to try and fill 600 slots.
Where we've lost some deputies both from corrections and patrol to agencies that are offering these incentive packages. And it's created a deficit employees here that has resulted in lots of overtime for the deputies, both corrections and patrol that are working, and just general staffing shortages that put in the long run, public safety issue, because we're not running at full staff, and employees are starting to get burned out because they're working so much.
Down to the bottom.
Right here's where we control all movement within the correctional facility, as far as for inmates and corrections deputies. Staff shortages over here have resulted in a lot of overtime costs, and employees, sheriffs, corrections deputies working more hours than than they really should be because of our shortages. And it's tough on them when they're away from their families that much. They get burned out. But it just has an effect on them that eventually they want to see a light at the end of the tunnel where they can not put in so many hours. But as far as them doing their job and doing it well, that's still in place. They still come to work every day with their game face on, ready to go to work. But some of them are working in a 2-week period. Some of them are putting in upwards of 150 hours in a 2-week period to cover the staff shortage over here. It's a struggle, and there's a lot of things that contribute to it. And I think on a local level, we're doing everything we can to attract people into this profession. But again, it's going to come down to our senators and our representatives in state government listening to law enforcement leaders, have a plan moving forward to keep recruiting and retaining employees, because in the long run, we lose good employees. It's an expense to the taxpayer. It's not, it costs the taxpayers money when we have to retrain. And so our incentive is to maintain and retain our employees so that's not a burden to the taxpayer.
We'll be right back with my final thoughts on the county seat. For 7 years, Utah's Community Voice has been the county seat, a program that looks beyond politics to spotlight the issues and stories that really matter to you and your community. Now you can help set Utah's agenda for the future by joining the conversation. Become a county seat sponsor and help support those conversations that are critical to the future of state government. Contact us at 801-947-8888 to make your contribution to help the voice of Utah be heard like never before.
in a place that is beyond words. There is nothing to be said, except take your time in Bryce Canyon country.
There's a little place on a Utah map where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
Too often we find ourselves in shoes like these, or these. Wouldn't it be nice to change into something more like this, or this? How about these? Put on whatever shoes you prefer and come to Beaver County. We have exactly the adventure you need to put under them. So the next time you want to change out of these, come to Beaver County where you can jump into a pair of these. Beaver County, Utah. Lace up for adventure.
Welcome back to the county seat. If you're like me, the conversation about law enforcement shortages usually only comes up on the radar scope when there are budget fights at the county. And I interpret the warnings of county leaders saying that without increased spending, there will be staff reductions at the sheriff's office as a hollow threat to get support for the tax increases. I interpret it as a scare tactic. But as we've seen today, the impact of not having the right compensation, along with a culture of support for law enforcement in a community, will eventually lead to no one being available when danger comes to your house. We spend oodles of money on education, as well we should, as Sheriff Curtis pointed out. But how much less important is our safety at home and our responsibility to justly punish those who are incarcerated? Maybe the old library is just fine for right now. Maybe the old swing set at the city park will do. These seems like problems of privilege in comparison to our safety as citizens in town, on the street, and in our own backyard. Wherever we live in Utah, we should all want well-trained people to protect us. We should want to be picking the cream of the crop of people with a desire to serve instead of being forced to scrape the barrel. After all, we grant them the power to detain us. We grant law enforcement officers the power to restrain us. We even grant them the right of lethal force to execute their duties. Don't we want the people in those positions to be equipped with the best temperament and training to apply those powers judiciously? I would certainly hope so. Now, to bring this into focus, folks, this is not a problem in someone else's county. This is a problem in yours. It's currently affecting every county in the state. So it is time for us to delve into this as responsible citizens and advise our elected representatives as how to proceed. And that's my 2 cents worth for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on the County Seat.